stand by for action.
Thank you, Johnny. My name is Abe Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. I want to thank everyone who has stuck with me throughout the Way Back series. It's something that I felt compelled to do, and I will be moving on to other things after. But for now, I'm compelled to add to the series by including commentaries on the way back between myself and the Underground Professor of UGP Radio. Now, the Underground Professor has an excellent program which I encourage people to listen to, available through Periscope, Pundit Press Media, Blog Talk Radio, and other media outlets. Please check the Prof's Blog Talk Radio webpage for showtimes. These programs will not be as heavily edited as is the norm, because the discussions that I had with the Underground Professor were done in a very relaxed atmosphere on his fine program. I'm presenting them to you because I feel they only enhance the messages that I have delivered through the way back. The professor has his own unique style of educating, and one means of education is through music. And this is evident in the Prof's show opening, which is perhaps the best podcast opening that there is.
For a miracle at UGP. Are you ready for a miracle with UGP? Oh, radio is here for you. We're gonna learn something new. Are you ready for a miracle at UGP?
Jesus went onto the well and made the water wine. Raised Lazarus from the dead, restored sight to the blind. Jesus said, "Look at the sea." He walked across the sea. We give power to you and me. I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle? I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle?
For you and me.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Ready. Woo. Are you ready for a miracle with you and me?
Jesus taught the lame to walk, destroyed the devil's hand. Healed the leper, fed 5,000 with just one command. Said he who has ears, let them hear. He told the multitude. And blessed be the pure of heart, for they shall see the truth. I want to know. Are you ready for a miracle? I want to know. Miracle. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
Blessed be the ones who know, for they shall find their peace. Blessed be the ones who search, blessed be the meek. Blessed be the innocent, for they shall all be free. Blessed be the miracle, the same for you and me.
Are you ready for a miracle I am the Underground Professor coming at you almost live high atop a double rainbow, sharing it with the Agadorable himself, the unpleasant blind guy, on this show, The Way Back, Part 3. And so, without further ado, let me see if I can get his mic on without losing control of my show, as usually happens. It's hot, and I've still got control, so let's see if Ag's there. Ag.
It's hot, you're hot, I'm hot.
It's in the 90s in October, man. It's just not right.
Oh, well, it's probably in the 50s up here.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful up here, Prof. Really loving it.
Today's show is The Way Back with Agadorable himself, the unpleasant blind guy. And this is part 3, the end, I believe, right? So.
Yep. This is the end of it.
So we've made it through the stretch. So how do you want to play? You want me to play your bit and then talk, or you want to talk and then play the bit, or how do you want to work this?
Well, I'll preface it a little bit. For those who have heard the show before, when I did it a couple of years ago, it'll start out. Part 3 will start out with stuff you haven't heard before, because I wanted to add some things. I wanted to fill in the corners, as I say, like as the hobbits do when they're having a celebration. There were a few things that I didn't say in a couple of years ago that I wanted to say. This will be the finished product, and I'll use this every year around this time, because as long as I'm able, and that's a help. This will be this is a work of my life, and it may be the most important thing I ever do. It certainly, at this point, it's the biggest thing I've ever done. So if you've heard this before, this will be some new stuff that you haven't heard. And by the way, thank you to Kel Fritzy of Red Fox Radio for helping me. We kind of went back and cleaned up your show from last Sunday, Prof. So everybody gets to hear the conversation you and I had on part 2. So I encourage people to go back and listen to that show.
Well, every good boxer has a cut man in their corner, and Kel's our cut man.
Oh, yep. Amen to that. Yeah. She is first class, and I want to thank her for helping out. And Prof, again, I want to thank you for allowing me to do all this. But without
Kel
further
says it's
ado,
a great series, Dave. Not mentioning my role in all this, but that's okay. I'm going to have to go back and listen to how she recut it, because I might not even be in it anymore.
No. I was the one that did all the cutting and all that stuff. So. I really wanted to get that conversation in with you. This has been a great adjunct to it, and you added something to it. You added something to the entire concept, which as you listen, as folks listen to part 3, you'll see that this is exactly what I said to do. You did what I said to do before I said to do it. So with that, Prof, if you want to go ahead and play the bit, then we'll talk about it after.
That's me, always coloring out of the lines. I'm that guy that gets caught when you go take a test and the proctor says, no one lift their pencil or open the page, and I'm like on page 3 already. So, okay, there we go. Agador's The Way Back, Part 3.
And you can hear Part 3 of The Way Back at the SHR Media YouTube page, or you can listen to the entire recording of The Way Back on the Unpleasant Blind Guy YouTube page.
Anno Domini. I think that means half off pizza at Domino's, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly did a couple of nights ago, boy.
Boy, I would not want to be in Arlington, Texas right now. We got the Cowboy game getting out, and you got the Ranger game starting at 7. Oh, my gosh, I can't believe what the traffic would be like there. So, I used to call myself the Underground Professor because I figured that when the country goes tango uniform, that I'll sneak into the underground and be that guy that starts teaching people to create a rebellion and a resistance movement and guerrilla warfare type thing, and then go after. And but the exceptional conservative outed me, so I guess now I've moved up in status to being one of the frontline sacrifices for when the Muslims take over. I'll be one of the first they hunt down and take out, or try to take out. I don't know how many will be laying around my feet when they do it, but they'll come after me eventually, I'm sure.
Well, but the point is, until that time comes, you can teach, and as I said last week, you can create a lot more underground professors.
I hope.
You can just be the original.
You remember the show I did that I called Watch One, Do One, Teach One?
Actually, I believe I do.
Yeah,
you might want to expand on that, though.
Yeah, the premise being that in medical school, you watch a procedure, then you do the procedure you just watched, and then you teach it. And the reason for that is that watching you learn how to do it, then doing it, you actually get the mechanics of the procedure out of the way. But then when you teach it, you learn it from a different perspective, and you learn it so much better than just having witnessed the situation. And I always did that in my classrooms with important concepts. I would go through the concept of watch one, do one, teach one. And by doing that, whether my students even knew they were or not, I would demonstrate or give some examples, and then I would have others reiterate it, and then I would have them, or give me some of their own, and then I would have them explain to the class why their concepts were correct. And what they ended up doing was the watch one, do one, teach one methodology. And so I like to think that that's what I'm doing here. When I hear people use the term constitutionally federated republic and things like that, then I realize that that's what's happening. The people are listening to me do it, and now they're doing it, and hopefully they'll go out and teach others about it. And so you're a perfect example. You watched me do it, then you've done it, and now you're out teaching others. So, hoo-ah.
Well, yeah, and that is because you said it, and then I thought about it, and I realized that makes a whole lot of sense, because that's where we're at. That's where we started, rather. And it made such common sense that I started adding that to my language. Yeah. I've heard other people say it too.
Ken tries to say it, but he's not very successful at it. Well, being an English major, I guess that's really causing him some problems.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true. But he does give it a try. So I give him an A for effort. He does. Yes. He does give it a shot. I give him an A for effort.
Well, we graded on an affirmative action curve, the bell curve for him, so he gets an A.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Every time, because if he doesn't get an A, it's racist, and we don't want that. But people, you mentioned of Ken. People like Ken are going to have to be out there as well. His biggest draw as a podcaster is that he makes people feel every story that he relates. It doesn't matter if it's Cecil Mills or obviously his daughter Sharnice, or stories about unsolved murders, cold cases in D.C. He has a method of imparting that to people that makes them give a damn, and that is a talent that we need more of. The people in our corner need more of, and it's a natural talent. It's not something you can learn. It's just something he can do. But people like him are going to be some of the natural teachers as we move forward, and people like yourself who are more grounded in the historical aspects and things of that nature. It comes down, as I said, to doing what you can do. You guys will approach the same story with a different perspective, but they're equally valid, and they both should be listened to equally, and they both can teach, and they're both things that people can engage in. Ken can make someone go out sign an online petition or start a rally or go to a church or something like that. You make people go out and do research and then teach others. In a way, Prof, we can all be teachers, even schmucks like me, because not only can you learn from anybody, that's one of my bromides. I can learn from anybody, but everybody can teach in their own way. Everyone has their own method of teaching, and it doesn't matter how it is. Now, in the past, 3 weeks or so, close to a month, we've talked about people who can go out there and pick a guitar and sing a song, and people like what they're singing. And if they throw a message in there, well, that's teaching. People can write, some people can, and that's a method of teaching. Some people can do stand-up comedy, and it's really entertaining, and they can teach that way. These are our methods that the left has used for generations, and they're methods that we should use, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
And the most important way people can teach, especially conservatism, is to live their lives by example, to do the right thing and to be moral and ethical as much as possible. And when you fail, to stand back up, dust yourself off, and try harder again tomorrow. That will teach people more than anything else in society how to behave and how to work, and that it's effective. As long as it's not done in a hypocritical manner, then the teaching's good. But you're right, everyone can teach. This is why I like having progtards come on my show, but none will, is because of the illustration I get to use to expose them, because then they teach what it's about, what they believe, and that, more than what I could tell people, is an enforcement of teaching, but even people like that unwittingly teach. But for those who think, oh, I can't teach, I think that's really what you're getting at, and that is that we all do, and we do it 1,000 times a day. Whether we lean over somebody's shoulder and point out something to them, or we have a child. If you're a parent, then you can teach. Again, by example or by instruction, but you're still teaching constantly as a parent. So it's nothing that you have to leave just to the educators. And as far as education goes, I think we need to consciously start getting people recruited into the education world. And we need to do it also in the entertainment world. I've noticed more and more people in Hollywood are coming out, and the new coming out, black's the new orange. Well, today the new coming out is admitting that you believe in the Constitution, and you're seeing this in the military, you're seeing it in Hollywood, you're seeing it in television shows and whatnot. I've been watching and listening, and it's amazing how there'll be a tiny little conservative message here and there. One sentence, one statement, one look. And I think that's going to grow. It's terrible we're facing the dilemmas we are in this country, but the good news is the more they do this, the more unabashed they do it. And they're willing to, say and do things. I'm going to kill you if you don't shut up. The more they, hey,
just like that.
Yeah, just like that. See, I'm teaching.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And,
perfect
and
example.
Running to make sure he knew that I knew it wasn't her.
Right.
Well, I forget my line, but we got to get into these fields and fill them, because we basically have surrendered them since the McCarthy witch hunt. We all but quit being in Hollywood and in academia. And we've paid the price utterly for it. While they capitalized on pop culture and the media, we stand around pompously saying that we were better, and you people would just naturally understand that without teaching them, without educating them. And that's the great fault of the Republican Party. Not that our ideas are substandard, but the fact that we do not teach them. And if we do win, we just immediately assume that we've won, and we don't have to ever teach or keep people abreast of what we're doing or why it's the right way.
Well, you're right. I mean, we win elections, but we don't win the hearts and minds of the people. And you're absolutely right. Now, I shared earlier a video with you over the Twitter of some atheist talking to Bill Maher, and he was talking about Islam, which we're not talking about this evening, but he was talking about the free speech movement at Berkeley. He said was saying that he could remember this, and this was in the early 1960s, and back then. The free speech movement was exactly that. You could do and actually were encouraged to speak up on whatever ideas you had, and those might be conservative or progressive. It didn't matter. That's turned around on our campuses now. If you let's say for instance you are Bill Maher and you come out and you say that Islam is a problem, you might become disinvited to a commencement address. To give a commencement address at Berkeley, at the very place where the free speech movement supposedly started. So, yes, you are right about that. It is the new coming out when people actually come out with conservative ideas, and it's going to take an awfully long time for things to swing back to to more of a center when it comes to people in entertainment who come out and say, yes, I'm a conservative, I'm a constitutionalist, and I'm also a darn good actor, and music is the same way. I actually have a fan. She's one of the few. Loves my shows, but she says she can't share them because she's a musician. And she's afraid that she won't get gigs for herself and her band if she shares out my shows. This is the kind of thing that we have to turn around, because there are more people out there, we know this, that agree with us, that agree with constitutionalism. Forget conservatism for the moment. They agree with constitutionalism. They agree that the Bill of Rights are the cat's rear end. It's great, but they can't come out and openly defend it against people like Muslims who would just throw it in the dustbin of history, because they will lose their livelihoods if they do. If they're an actor, they'll never get a part again. If they're a musician, then they'll lose gigs, and they might not get signed to a record contract or whatever. This is a kind of cultural shift that you're talking about that's beginning, that needs to be continued. And that's why I encourage people in the way back who have talent to go out there and flaunt that talent and get to a point where they can entertain and sell their stuff and where people want to hear from them. And then, begin to slip a conservative message in here and there. That's how it starts. That's how the left did it. And you were bang on with your analysis of what happened to Hollywood after the McCarthy era. I mean, now we know that at this point in history that McCarthy was right in a lot of the things, to go after a lot of the people he did. There was a communist conspiracy going on in the entertainment world at the time. We can argue about the methods that McCarthy used, but
or who knew that it was the Muslim threat we needed to really worry about, not the commies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Hindsight 2020. We can argue about all of that, but that's pretty useless at this point. What we have to do at this point is try and get people into entertainment and academia and places like that, and get them established, and then they can come out, and people can see them. They can and they can be entertained by them, and then by the way, I do not believe in socialism. I believe in capitalism. So there's that aspect of it too.
Well, yes. Let me tell you another thing that we should be doing, and that is and this is in regards to the teaching part. If you know somebody, like say you have a child or grandchild that's in school, or you know a teacher that goes to your church or goes to your health club or lives down the street, however you know them, you should start talking to them, and don't overload them or avalanche them, but just start talking to them about what they teach and how do they know what they're teaching's right. And you don't do that by saying, "Hey, how do you know what your teaching's right?" But you ask them how they get the information and where it comes from and who authorizes it, and they'll tell you these things because their innocent questions have nothing really to do with them. This is out of their scope of control. And then you may start asking them some questions like, well, what do they teach about the Boston Tea Party or George Washington or whatever? And then you can say, oh, my goodness, I've never heard it like that. And then you can start telling them the reality and the truth. Of course, which you can get here, and but you do this slowly and without it being like you're educating them, but just in a casual conversation. But we need to do this with teachers because I blame teachers for the problems we have in school, but most of them don't even know what they're teaching's wrong because they go to school and they're given this stuff and they're told this is what they need to teach, and they assume it's correct. And the teachers that are teaching them may not even know it's wrong. It's the ones that created it that know that they were creating falsehoods. But once it gets, a generation or two down with some revisions and whatnot, people tend to lose that fact. And that's why we have to educate in the first place in our country, because our education system has changed from teaching. Let me rephrase this. The one thing about public schools that has always been consistent is that its job was to teach us about government. Now, the Founding Fathers, their concept of it was to teach us about the Constitution and how government was supposed to work so that if it wasn't, we would know and we could go after those responsible. Today, the role of the schools is to teach people that government is there for them from cradle to grave and everything they do is awesome. Even when they fail, it's with good intentions, so don't blame them and help them try again. And because of that, we need to re-educate our educators, and we need to do it in a non-threatening manner. And so when I say watch one, do one, teach one, that's your target. Back to you.
Yeah. You bring up a point about doing that, which is, I know there are a lot of angry people out there, and we've got darn good reason to be angry, but just getting in somebody's face and saying, well, you ought to teach this stuff this way, you jerk, that's not going to get you anywhere. I'm not, sorry, my British friends, but I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles, only because their stuff just got vastly overplayed over here. But, from their song Revolution, if you go around, I'll rephrase it a little bit. If you go around acting like a dirtbag and yelling in people's faces and being disrespectful, you're just going to close their minds against you. And that's why I try to approach some things the way I do, even from a perspective viewpoint, a progressive viewpoint. I try to let progressives know that, for instance, what's going on now with the progressive Muslim control base will not serve them and their needs. It's not about it's not so much about how it's a bad thing for conservatives or libertarians. It's about how it's a bad thing for progressives. It's kind of like how. Have you ever heard of the guy in Las Vegas who has the trained cats? He's got a troupe of trained cats that he has a show with on stage in Las Vegas. Have you heard of this guy?
Yeah, weren't they gay and one of them got eaten by one of them? No.
You're thinking of another couple of guys, and they use tigers. This is
Siskel and Ebert or something like that.
No, not them. This is a single guy. His daughter helps him in his act, and they have house cats, domestic cats that they train to do stuff. Now, his method to get them to do what he wants them to do is he goes to the shelters and he picks out the cats, and he trains them to do the things that they already like to do anyway. Okay, he doesn't try and train a house cat to do something that it doesn't want to do. If you're not familiar with house cats, if a cat doesn't want to do something, you're going to have a really hard time training it to do that. But if it already likes doing something, then you're halfway there. And that's what he does. He trains the cats to do the things that they like to do. In other words, he gets on their level as far as, this cat may like to jump from one platform to the next one. So he trains them to do that. And they do it because they like to do it anyway. Okay?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
My father always said, though, that a cat has staff and dogs have masters.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. So when you approach someone like an educator or just someone, let's say somebody at work, Gieske's told me about, this guy at work that's this big progressive that's always popping off. If you have somebody at work like that, you can approach them and just say, okay, well, all right. Now, you're for massive welfare, and okay, you and I can argue over whether or not that's a good thing. But how about the fact that President Obama wants to import 100,000 combat-age men from the Middle East? I mean, is that not going to make for less welfare for the indigenous people of the United States, for American Indians, and for black people? Is that not going to hurt the people that are already here? In other words, teach it.
You got to hit them at their level. I always ask them why all these able-bodied men are coming here, and it's too dangerous to bring their wives and children with them, so they leave them in the war zone that they're fleeing.
Exactly. Yes, that's another good way of doing it. I've got a friend. He doesn't mind that I call him this, so I'm just going to say it. I've got a friend, that I call Paranoid Paul. He's not very political, but when he thinks about politics, he's fairly well on point. And he calls these guys cowards. He says, well, why are that they're young men of fighting age? Why the heck are they leaving the area? If your side is losing, find another side to fight on. Don't go off somewhere else. The message has to be tailored to the person, and that's something that the left does, Prof, very well. As you know, they've got messages for kids through things like Sesame Street. They've got tons of messages for preteens and teens through things like MTV and popular music. They've got messages for the older people, in the form of some of their people that they trot out from Hollywood and the old music days. They've got plenty of messages for them, and they've got messages for the 18 to 50 crowd as well, with some of the television programs they right, yeah. One of their great means of messaging, as we know, is through television. And I was talking to Kel about this earlier. I used to like the show, The Big Bang Theory, but it went hard left messaging a long time ago. I can't even watch the show anymore. But it has a wide appeal to that 18 to 50 crowd. And that's what they do. They have a message for everyone of almost every interest. And that those are the kinds of things that we have to develop on the right when we're teaching people about this stuff.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, they lost me when they started marrying each other and coming out of the closet and pushing. They got famous enough that they could change the direction of the show from just being funny to being a political statement, and that lost it. Same with Seth Rogen, is the stuff he's constantly doing and saying, and it's just such idiocy, like the thing about Ben Carson. So I won't see another Seth Rogen movie, and that's too bad because I really liked his stuff. But the problem is we don't seem to have anybody that's offering a difference. And when we do, when you get things that are being offered, like religious movies, they aren't correct, or they're preachy and they're not. I don't know about you, but when you watch Cecil B. DeMille, and he gets a lot of things wrong, but when you watch his Ten Commandments, you don't really feel like you're being preached to.
No,
you know what I mean?
No, you feel like you're being entertained. And I'll give you another one real quick, Prof. To your point, I'll give you another one real quick, and that was that mini-series, The Bible. Now, the guy that put that thing together was an Obama supporter, but that's dynamite entertainment.
I haven't seen it yet.
Do yourself a favor and watch it. It's probably on your Netflix or something like that.
Oh yeah,
I
have
had
it
a look
on there saved, but
yeah,
he was an Obama supporter. I thought the devil looked like
Yes.
Obama in that thing.
Well, that's what people said, But the point is, I took a look. I took my own look at the ratings for the nights that thing was on, and it destroyed everything in its path. People loved it, and the production values were first rate. Absolutely, it was very entertaining. And again, just as you said, as far as the DeMille movies go, you didn't feel like somebody was preaching at you. And yet the message was very good. I would say to anybody, do yourself a favor and watch that if you can manage it. Heck, even the DVD isn't that expensive. I want to get it for myself because, it's exactly the sort of thing you're talking about, Prof. It's not preachy, and yet it is very inspiring. So there you go. Back to you.
So, now, when I was listening to parts 1 and 2, I kept thinking we need to add Bastiat's books, and then you made good on your revisions. So yes, you put Bastiat in there in part 3. Did I not hear his name?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. You did. Bastiat, Locke, and again the precursors to our Bill of Rights, I put those in as well.
Yes.
Because people have to know how the American Republic started. They have to know where all that. Yes, how and why, and they have to realize this wasn't just made out of whole cloth. That this began with our Constitution in a way began with the 12 Tables of Roman Law. And the Bill of Rights, in a way, began with the Magna Carta. But there's a whole line of stuff that goes all the way down to the 17th century that they had to build on in order to create all that.
Right.
So people of the future will need this so that they're not saying, oh, the great founders of the American Republic did sit in Philadelphia in a hot, sweaty room, and did poop this greatness out of their rear ends. No, that's.
That came out of their cat's behind, evidently, according to you.
Yeah. But if they do that, then there's bound to be somebody sitting on the side going, "Oh, come on, nobody's that good." But if you give
exactly. I think I have every book you listed.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you still talking. I apologize.
Well, no, I'm just going to say, if you give them the information of how they came to that, then suddenly those framers become human as the people that are going to be setting up the Republic at a time that we know not.
Right, the next time. Yeah. I agree.
Exactly.
And of course, they'll be flawed too, but hopefully they can do what the founders did. The founders learned from the mistakes of those in the republics of the past, and they refined political science. And I would like to think that the next generation that has to do this will learn from the mistakes the founders made, pay a little more attention to the Anti-Federalists and stuff. So you would want to add the Anti-Federalist papers, Cato's papers, etc.
Yes,
letters to the farmer,
Farmer
from the Pennsylvania. I've been doing the B Team series on the Founding Fathers. I think a lot of their writing we probably ought to tuck in there somewhere. But did you mention C.S. Lewis?
You know what? You're right. That would be a great one. But this ties in right here, Prof. You've already, through the talks we've had, you contributed a couple of things, and not just these writers. C.S. Lewis is great, by the way. But you've talked about buying large, like large numbers of some of these things and passing them out. You've also talked about creating little small, as you said, Minuteman pamphlets that you can just hand out that won't be really big things, stuff that you can just kind of carry along in your coat, and if we do have a repressive government and you talk to someone and you think you can trust them, you go, hey, here, I got something for you. Here you go. And it might have one of Cato's letters in it, or something like that. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about making individualistic choices, along with the other stuff that I suggested.
Yes. Yep. And I figured we might as well include some of the stuff from the Ink Spots since you included Tolkien. I figured, well, you better balance that with C.S. Lewis, and there is one book I think that may be instrumental, and that is if someone wants to understand what government is, it would be called The Basic American Government by Carson. And I don't even know if it's still in print anymore, but it was how I learned what I know. Most of what I know came out of that book and the 5,000-Year League, of course.
Now, is that a textbook?
Huh? It's a textbook, yeah.
Okay. No,
like from the 70s
heard of
or something, So it's pre-polluted textbooking, and
that's what I'm talking about. In other words, it's a good old-fashioned civics book.
Right. The way they used to be. And you mentioned that. I think I remember you saying that we needed to beat the 70s or 60s so that we could get stuff that hasn't been modified completely by the Fabian socialists.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I said, basically anything before about, 1970. Certainly anything before the 80s. Right. Some of the stuff in the 70s is okay, but it's by the 70s. This is when I went to school, and it's more or less when you went to school. I think we're about the same age. Things were already starting to be modified, but only in that they were not as complete as they could have been. American history books, Texas history books. Of course, I went to school in Texas, and we learned Texas history, boy. Those kinds of things that are not, it's not that things were turned around or anything of that nature, but some things just weren't included. I think in order to make the curriculum move faster or something like that, and who knows, that could have very well been the beginning of the modification of these things over a few generations. But I'd say certainly anything before 1970.
I think I would also add Parson Weems' book on what's the title of it? I think I've got a copy of it here. I do. Let me see if I can find it again. It's on The Life of Washington by Parson Weems. You remember the Parson Weems fable about can't tell a lie, chopping down the cherry tree and all that? He's the one that started that. But I think that book would be great for an illustration, and we did that book study a couple of years ago on here, but it'd be a good way of illustrating how new governments need their myths to promote the correct and moral ideologies of it. Not out and out lies like the Soviet Union did to promote what it thought was good about its system, but the morals of not lying, and telling the truth, and that's why everybody could trust George Washington to do the right thing. The man was a consummate liar and a spy master, and everybody knew this when Parson Weems wrote his book right after the death of Washington. But people immediately bought into this myth, even though they knew the truth, because of the morals it was teaching. And teachers across this country used that as a textbook, teaching their kids, knowing that they were teaching their kids a lie about George Washington, but that the message was more important. and it was inculcating our children with morals and ethics, and that's what they were using it for. And I think we should do that. And I think I would add one other thing, just for fun, because we don't want to bore everybody to death in the future when they're trying to save the country. But I think without them knowing it, a surprise series of books, just virtually any Robert A. Heinlein book, Starship Troopers, A Door into Summer, those books should all be included. So it'd be fun, but you'll also learn about government through the back door. Well,
hang on a second, because I was waiting for you to end your selection there, because I was going to suggest The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert A. Heinlein.
Sure.
In that one, for those who don't know, we're doing our science fiction series now that we were going to do. In that one, it is a story of how the moon, which was a protectorate of the planet Earth, obviously, broke away from Earth and formed Luna Free State. It formed its own independent country. And there's some very fascinating things in there about the realities of revolution, the mechanics of revolution, and yes, there's some. He talks about myths in there as well. Robert A. Heinlein, as far as his persona goes, was kind of a freakazoid, but he did do some pretty good predictive science fiction. There's that book, and yes, as you say, Starship Troopers. I have to tell you, Prof, if I were president, that's pretty much exactly how I'd run the military.
Textbook. That's right, and how I would get voting.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's actually been discussed. Basically, if you don't serve, you don't vote.
I'd be okay with that, but I'd also be okay with if, other than veterans, if you get a paycheck from the government, then you should not be able to vote to increase your paycheck. So I think anybody that's a politician and anybody on welfare should not be allowed to participate in an electoral process.
Well, yeah, we can kind of refine that a little bit, but a lot of ideas that Heinlein puts out, some of them are just flat out freaky, and a few of them just kind of make you go.
Kind of L. Ron Hubbard-ish.
But he does. In the two books we're talking about, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and The Starship Troopers, you do get a good and interesting sense of where his head is at regarding government and the future, and it's very pragmatic, and it's entertaining.
Don't forget Door in the Summer, right? That's the one where the kids, they go into an alternate planet and they get trapped, so they have to create their own government from scratch. It's kind of a Lord of the Flies thing.
Actually, that's not a bad one. But I think what you're talking about could be Pebble in the Sky. People might have to look for that.
Oh, am I getting them confused? It's been a long time. But you know what? I'm going to go buy them all now so I can start reading them again on Kindle.
Well, yeah. It's you're exactly right, though. If Pebble in the Sky is the title, that is what happens. What happens for, again, this is for people who don't know, young people who are about to graduate high school or in some cases college have to pass a kind of a survival course. It's kind of a weekend deal. They send them off to a planet that they're not familiar with, and they have to survive for a weekend. No big deal, right? Except something happens with the transportation system that sent them out there, and they're stuck for a couple of years. They have to form their own government. They have to form associations, alliances, stuff like that. And yes, that's a great book you thought of, because in there things could have gone either way. I mean, they could have all turned into, they could have turned into a bunch of, roving gangs and stuff like that. But what they wound up doing was setting up an actual town with law enforcement and manufacturing.
Well, the way you should word it is that they set up civilized society with a social compact as opposed to might makes right.
Yes.
I'm holding up my Second Amendment coin. For those of you on Periscope can see it. It's copper. It's really cool looking, I think. Yep. And it's a $2 copper coin. I like these. For those of you who want species in the future to, forgot to turn on ag, to protect yourself so you can buy things. I always have this. Every show I have this. I'm usually nervously fondling it while I'm thinking. Gives my hands something to do and keeps them out of my nose. All right, Harris here. We got everybody in the back here. So there's some boys out in my field playing football, and here you go, Harris. Yeah. And so that's why those kids were barking earlier. The dogs were barking earlier. All right, so we're talking with Agador, the unpleasant blind guy, over the Way Back, a series we've been doing. And we're talking about modern books. And one of the things I think, instead of saying what I would include, one of the things I would not include are any of the books by the exalted one, Rush Limbaugh, or Glenn Beck, or even, what's his name, the other one, Mark Levin.
Really?
I've read all their books, and none of them would I want to put into a package to save the country because of the way they're designed and what they talk about. What do you think?
So you would not include, now I've got to say, I have my issues with Glenn Beck, and that's well known. But I have to say that I have learned a couple of historical things from him, like, what initiated the Wounded Knee Massacre. And I have to say that I'm very appreciative of that. But I have not actually sat down and read any of his books. So, I would appreciate knowing why you wouldn't want to put any of his books or the others in, just, for my own edification and for that of the listeners.
Well, I'll tell you, here's why. What do they focus on? Limbaugh's books, like See, I Told You So and stuff, are things that he talked about on the radio show, but mostly they point out the faults of progressivism and liberalism. And if we're at the point where we're having to restore a constitution that's dead and a progressive Muslim type country, then I don't think that argument needs to be made anymore. I think the argument needs to be made of why a republic, not why everybody else is wrong. And a lot of these end up having political statements that they put in that are just that. And they're politics. They're not I have a definition I call creative politics and innuendo politics, and that they fall into mostly that. Now, creative politics today, at the time of the revolution, may very well have fallen into innuendo politics. I mean, things like Thomas Paine, the Declaration of Independence, they were all innuendo politics, but they also served another point, and they were creative. They were creating a new world order, and that's what they were trying to do, something that had not been done before, a republic that had never existed in history. And they were very successful at what they did, in creating a more perfect union, not a perfect one. But when I look at these things that they write, I don't see anything in it that is a concept that we need to rebuild and that the entire book would be worth having. In order to do one of these, I think the entire concept of the book must run through. And so, because books aren't cheap, and they're big and cumbersome, and and so you would want them to be worth the effort of hauling around and secreting and hiding and reading and memorizing and teaching. So I don't think that we need that. Now, there's that one book, I don't remember, I've got it up here in the shelf, that he does. As an Indian, I already knew about Wounded Knee, but the concepts of the book were that government does a lot more wrong than we give it credit for, and we get that. But I don't know that I would stick that in.
That's it for this time. Next time, The Way Back Commentaries 2015 continues with the Underground Professor.
Agador and the Underground Professor, both sitting high atop a double rainbow, gaily swinging our feet over the Hermitage of North Texas's liberal conservative studies. This has been copyrighted in the year of your Lord 2015, via con carne for the Agadorable fans and via con toodles for mine.
I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2015, Anno Domini. Now for Dave's Canes. Extras that help you navigate the new media world.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.